Hello, it's Brad Laurie of BlockchainBrad, and today I'm honored to speak with Pascal Talarida. He is the CEO of Jarvis Network, and this is entirely free as an interview, and he is here to explain all things related to Jarvis, and most importantly, provide you with an exclusive update into all the things that they've been building. So thank you very much, Pascal, for being here to represent Jarvis Network.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brad, for having me. And yeah, I'm pretty happy actually to do this interview with you. It's been quite a long time that we have discussed. So yeah, quite excited.
Yeah, likewise, mate. And recently I've been ill, and I thank you for your patience. And I have been wanting to talk to you for some time. And I've always supported Jarvis because I've obviously looked into the code, the Discord, and always maintained communication with you for some time now. So again, it's important people know in the name of transparency, this is only about education provided for you, and obviously for all of us in the crypto community as we learn about some of those tech developments, and most importantly, learn about people who are trying to be here for the long term. So Pascal, one of the things I want to ask you firstly is about the statement of bringing decentralized finance to everyone. And that's a big statement. It's also a very general one. Do you want to discuss that in terms of the broad scope of that, and also hone it down for us, better help us better understand how it relates to Jarvis Network?
Yes, so bringing DeFi to everyone could be understood by two different ways. The first one, and most probably the most logical, it's through user interface, which will be very easy to use. So most of the time, actually, when people read our website, they're like, oh, okay, so they want to do something quite easy to use. It's true. I mean, it's one of our goals, but actually what we meant is a bit different. So for example, right now, DeFi is a global financial system, but everything is about US dollar. So maybe for American people, maybe even Australia, actually don't know, or European, it's not that a big deal. I mean, dollar is quite easy to buy and to play with. But for most of the people actually around the world, it's not that easy to acquire dollar or to think in terms of dollar. So what we meant, it's more that we try to build here an infrastructure which will be able to welcome, for example, people from Africa or Southeast Asia by issuing, for example, synthetic assets in their local currency. And our goal with that regard is to enable those people to join DeFi, but by using their currency, purchasing their currency, trading with it. Why not depositing them on Aave and start to earn interest? So this is what we meant when we say that we want to bring DeFi to more people. And of course, then we want to wrap this technology into cool interface. But yeah, it's mainly on the tech side that we meant.
And it's interesting you say it's only on the tech side, because as you'd appreciate from all you've said, that does extend into a potentially game-changing technology for people globally. Because as you'd appreciate, in your travels around the world, you're in Europe, and you would know arguably through your knowledge of Europe and Asia and many other continents, in fact, that are in dire need of this. The fact is that if they can access this from their current currencies, that could potentially be a game changer for them in an economic sense, in a socioeconomic sense, when we're talking about potential to really affect real change in their lives. So have you thought about that impact as well, aside from just the tech potential of what Jarvis Network can do?
Yeah, and there is this famous sentence that many people said in 2017 during the ICO craze, that we are here to bank the unbanked and, to change people's lives and so on. So it's true that it was a very marketing phrase that was using a lot in the past. But I think it's actually now can become some kind of reality, because yeah, we could theoretically bank the unbanked, or at least not welcome them in the normal banking structure, but in what we are doing here in DeFi. So some kind of self-bank. And yeah, I think it could have a big impact. First, for example, I like to take always this example, because I know many people in a French-speaking African country. Before to work in Jarvis, I was working in the trading industry. We are doing online services. And because I'm French, my market is not limited to France. It's, basically every country that speaks French. And 20% of my audience was actually African, French-speaking African country. And every week I was receiving emails from people asking me, hey, I like what you do. I would like to trade. I would like to invest. I would like to access to whatever financial product, but it's quite hard, if not impossible, from where I am. So do you know any broker or exchanges that may accept me, people from Cameroon, for example, Senegal, and so on? And my answer was always no. I mean, I don't know. I know that many brokers, they don't want to work with people from your country. There is not enough AML system or banking infrastructure. I mean, many reasons. And it's very interesting because before Jarvis, I've been working in this industry for 7 years. And literally every week for 7 years, I was receiving messages from very young people, mostly men in Africa, who are like, hey, Pascal, I'm 22, 23. I have the will and I have the ambition to do something in finance or to invest or whatever, but I cannot. Can you help me? And now with crypto and synthetic assets, yeah, we could. I know that it sounds very cliche, but we really can. And so not a long time ago, I started to discuss with few of the person that I know in Africa, many Cameroon, Côte d'Ivoire, and so on. And there is still a big demand, which is not met. And I truly think that, yeah, DeFi, as soon as we solve the issue with the fees, because of course this is quite problematic on Ethereum, can really empower those people and bring them solutions or investment opportunities that they couldn't have before. And if you add a bit of education, if you add a bit of risk education and not just how to trade, how to invest, then we can help some countries to raise their level and basically to maybe see the birth of a new generation of developers, investors, and this kind of thing. So yeah, true, but it's possible.
And Pascal, it's very exciting. I mean, the fact that these countries and these members of these countries, these participants, also crypto, are starting to knock on the right doors, really try to access the right kind of services. Now, one of the things you mentioned in this discussion so far is DeFi, and clearly you are a proponent of Ethereum. You know, you're built into that with the protocols that you have. But I want to ask you a broad question, and it's going to be a tough one. I'm going to push you a little bit on this. Is what is DeFi? When we see the growth, we've been talking for years in text, but we now see DeFi stretching, you know, when it comes to layer zeros, layer ones, right across the scope of the landscape that is crypto today, especially when it comes to finance. So what is your position specifically on DeFi? Do you regard it as something as a trademark for Ethereum, or are you opening up that conversation, as many others are in the space, and realizing that DeFi is really something of a system, a service that can be applied by various blockchains?
It can be applied by various blockchains. The fact that we only speak about Ethereum is just because it was born on Ethereum, and not because Ethereum was the best blockchain or solution. It's just a consequence of the ERC20 standard. You know, all the ICOs have happened on Ethereum. So the money was there, projects were there, brands were there on Ethereum, and this is why it started here. But I'm not an Ethereum maximalist. I'm more a network maximalist. So this is why we are built on the top of Ethereum. But, you know, there are many other blockchains that are actually trying now to compete for market shares in terms of devs, not necessarily in terms of user, but they try to attract developers and they will succeed. I mean, many blockchains, they have the money. Many of them, they try actually to be EVM compatible. So for developers, it's quite easy to port their project there, and they have the ambition to do it, and they won't stop. So I don't see how Ethereum can forever be the sole blockchain where DeFi is happening. Maybe it's where most of the innovation will keep happening, because again, there are many brands and so many tools that you can play on Ethereum that you can't find elsewhere. But no, for me, DeFi is not unique to Ethereum, and that's all. It's just DeFi is just it's a decentralized system, finance, where everyone can be a service provider and everyone can be a user. That's all. This is my most simple definition of DeFi. I can be a banker, I can be an insurer, so it has nothing to do with Ethereum.
I really appreciate that, because obviously you being in Europe, you see the innovation that's happening in Berlin, for example, with Polkadot. We also see the likes of Solana trying to be expedient with their own system. We see Cosmos doing some amazing work, as you'd appreciate there. And, you know, and it even goes all the way to the more controversial sort of CDFI, CFI of BSC, the Binance Smart Chain, and many other key blockchain initiatives and teams are working hard at the moment too, as you know, with algorithm, near, and the list goes on. So it's good to hear that there's that realism built in. There's that true realist and true sort of technology first position when it comes to DeFi. Now let's extend that a little bit further. Again, you were right about the network effects, of course. Ethereum still is the market leader when it comes to devs as well. So in that sense, it's stated in your literature, especially on your website, that Jarvis Network specifically is a set of protocols on Ethereum currently, allowing anyone to be a broker. Now, I wanted to clarify that with the audience because you've really started to focus on one protocol particularly, more so in recent times, and that broker aspect as well, that service that you provide is built into that protocol. So do you want to elaborate for those who want to understand better the specifics of what you do, especially in 221?
Yeah, so maybe broker was not the best wording. Maybe liquidity provider would have made more sense for people. Mm-hmm. But from where I come, it's true that we speak about broker. Broker is someone who gives you access to a market. So somehow a liquidity provider is someone who gives you access to a market. So yeah, we do two protocols, and actually they work exactly the same way. You have on one hand a user, a trader who wants to speculate, and on the other hand you have the market maker, the broker, the liquidity provider, you name it, who is here to provide access to a market. The main difference between our two protocols is one, called Margineum, is centralized and is off-chain, and basically it's to trade CFDs. And the other one, Synthereum, is fully on-chain, and it's mainly to trade synthetic assets. The first protocol that we have launched, it was Margineum. Mm-hmm. And we were quite happy with what we have done, but it was too centralized. So of course we had the ambition to make it more decentralized, trustless, and so on. But it looks like that the market, our investors as well, decided that the biggest upside was the synthetic assets protocol. And the way we saw it is, as an example, when we raised funds, most of the people who were speaking with were like, oh, yeah, it's cool, but let's discuss about the synthetic asset that she wants to do. And it's funny because at the beginning, for me, synthetic assets were more like a side project. Actually, what we wanted with synthetic assets, it was to enable our user who were trading on Margineum to be able to trade with Euro token or Pounds token and not only with DAI. Because the way the Margineum was working is that the liquidity provider deposits DAI in a smart contract, and you trade on Forex or indexes or whatever against this liquidity provider. If you win, you win DAI. If you lose, you lose your DAI, and that's all. And we just wanted to have a bigger offering with Euro and so on and so on. So we really started the synthetic asset as a side project. But again, our investors and the market also, the market started to price synthetics and all of those synthetic asset protocol quite high. And we're like, okay, it looks like maybe it makes more sense for us to focus a bit more on the synthetic asset rather than on this CFD protocol. Mm. But the main reason actually was mainly a product market fit. So the thing is that we launched Margineum. I mean, it was live, it was on the mainnet, and we did actually $60 million of volume, mm-hmm. which is not huge, it's a big number, but for derivative, it's actually quite small. Mm-hmm. But the problem was the product market fit. Because when you go to see some users and you tell them, hey, look what I have done, I have built a trading platform where you deposit DAI, you can trade Forex, indexes with leverage, looks, it's pretty cool. But because it is not decentralized, you won't have the user who wants to trade in a decentralized way. And because it is with DAI and it has blockchain and there is no regulation, it's quite hard to actually convince a trader who are using a regular broker, which license and so on, to come to your platform. So it was actually a bad positioning, I think, because we are between the two worlds. And yes, the experience was cool. I mean, you log in with MetaMask and you trade. I mean, it's pretty cool. But to find the user would have been very complicated. While with the synthetic assets, we have our niche. We know all the upsides that synthetic assets have in DeFi. And we were like, okay, maybe it's better if we refocus a bit more on the synthetic assets. There is more opportunities, more composability, it's more decentralized. and it's actually way cooler. So
well,
yeah.
let me ask you a bit more about that. That's so interesting. So you started off with more of that CeFi, that more centralized trading system with the Marginarium, and then you've moved across, and for some time now you've been focused on the Synthereum as well, with the focus on the DeFi element of trading. But I wanted to ask you, how much is bent on narratives? How much is built on narratives when it comes to DeFi? Because we see that even today, with all the different verticals that come forth, there's still multi-sigs involved in many DeFi startups. There's still elements of some sort of quasi-control built in as they move forward into true and puristic DeFi. So even they, are finding those issues challenging. But it does seem to be that the undercurrent of the DeFi narrative upholds so much of the sort of value proposition of many of the different startups. And thus there's a pivot like you've done to really focus on that, the market share, and making sure that you enter into and maximize the best of all the resources you have and the network effects of DeFi. So what are your thoughts on that, in that the pressure, the requisite of having to make sure you stream into a very specific narrative?
Yeah, first, those narratives, I think you know it as well. It's more fake it until you make it. It's true that there is not really a fully decentralized finance as of today. Of course, there are some decentralized projects and so on. But the thing is that it's not just a pressure from maybe the community or to fit a narrative. It's also a pressure for security. I can give you an example. So with Margineum, one of the things that was bothering me is the fact that if our servers, for some reason, were attacked or just turned down, because there is an issue with Azure, we are using Azure from Microsoft, then it could endanger our users. Also, there is a regulatory issue. If someone tomorrow comes in my office and said, okay, what you do, we don't like it. It goes against this law. And we have a letter from a judge which says that you have to turn off everything. So here again, it's like a risk. So yes, I know that decentralized for many people is just narrative and it's some marketing, maybe bullshit. Mm-hmm. But for many projects, it's actually a way to protect your users, your project, against any risks that may arise in a centralized ecosystem. So, for example, with our synthetic assets, before to use Chainlink, we were using our own system. It was not really an oracle. It was a bit different, but yet the idea was to provide a price fit. And we were pretty happy with that because it was super scalable, super cheap, but it was centralized.
Right.
And I was like, okay, tonight I will go to bed. What if when I'm asleep, there is an issue? Okay, you can pay teams, people around the world to monitor all your price feed and so on and so on. This is, of course, very possible. But doesn't matter. How can I be sure that during this night there won't be an issue with the price feed, the server, or whatever? When you use Chainlink or any other solution, I'm not here to chill necessarily just Chainlink. You know that there is a decentralized network. You know that there are many nodes, and it's pretty hard to shut it down. So you also buy a peace of mind. A tranquility, So it's why decentralization is also important. It's not just the narrative; it's also good for your project and for your users.
Yes, and I really appreciate that. What a good analogy with the recent integration and the partnership with Chainlink, because obviously that's their expertise as well. And in that decentralized design, with their reputation-based model, and also just the way in which they've done that with so many other startups. Clearly, it's about outsourcing so that you can have that stressless, approach and focus on what you do the most, which is these synthetic assets. Now, I want to talk to you a bit more about that, Pascal, because we've seen in the past, even in Ethereum particularly, with startups like Synthetics and other synthetic-related assets with the other startups, they've been very popular. So popular that the market's really moved, particularly in those bull markets, and we're arguably in the middle of one now. Why do you think that is? And are you concerned at all that there's already been such a huge market share sort of allocated to some of these initial first movers in the synthetic arena, especially in the Ethereum context?
First mover are, they have a big advantage, of course, in any market. I think everybody knows it. But the market is still very, very tiny. DeFi is still very small. Ethereum DeFi is still very small. Synthetic assets are still very small. So, every time someone come and tell me, "Oh, but how will you compete as synthetics? I mean, they are so big and so on." Okay, but if you start thinking this way, first, you never do anything. And then if we look at the traditional financial world, there are actually thousands of banks, hedge funds, and service providers. I mean, there is a room for competition. And there is also room for collaboration. Actually, there are many things that we can do with synthetics to empower the end user. I mean, there is no point to try to compete no, there are many things that we can do together. So yeah, for me, the market is still very small. And if DeFi goes where I think and I truly hope it goes, then we are really still at the beginning and it's still very early. I know this is also some kind of narrative, like we are early, but it's true. I mean, we are at the end of the day, we are building a financial system which has the capacity to maybe not equal, but at least have 10 or 20% of the size of the real financial system. So regarding that, yeah, we're still very early.
Yeah.
And why people like synthetic assets, I don't know. I think it's just about the narrative. Just because all the synthetic assets that have been minted so far, I mean, created so far, they are cool, but they just have utility within the niche of DeFi. Like what synthetics have done, it's perfect for people trading Bitcoin and ETH and who do not want a slippage or this kind of thing. It's also very cool for Degen and Farmer because, as you may know, there are many things that you can do with synthetic assets issued by synthetics. UMA, we are built on the top of UMA, the same thing. They have many cool projects, but again, it's for DeFi people. And I think that people, when they hear synthetic asset, they're like, "Oh, so cool! We can have stocks on DeFi, and so maybe we can bring more people, and it's so cool." But so far, yeah, maybe Mirror Protocol have done it. But all the synthetic assets project that I have seen so far, they mainly focus on giving a good value proposition to DeFi people. While my view of synthetic assets is what I described you at the beginning. It's a tool to onboard, more people, because you don't have the limit of tokenized assets. You don't need an asset held somewhere in a bank or in custody somewhere. You just need a price fit, a bit of mathematics, a smart contract, and here you are. You can create any kind of assets to onboard people or to gain exposure to something. So yeah, it's a big market. It has still very big upsides, and we are very, very early. And for me, people maybe still do not have realized how to say what you can do with synthetic asset and how it will really help DeFi. I think it's one of the lowest, in the DeFi stack, it's one of the lowest layer, like the asset issuance layer. And it's also one of the most important because all the things above are built on asset. Aave, it's super cool, but if they don't have assets or synthetic assets to borrow and to lend, what you're gonna do? So yeah, synthetic assets are very valuable market, and this is also why we want to focus on that.
Yes, and it's interesting you say all of that because we've seen Kane really showcase just what a startup can do in relation to synthetics, and it's interesting too because when you understand the network that he's built his startup around, and obviously it wasn't his first startup, and others did not do so well. Is the network itself, as you'd appreciate within Ethereum, is very important from the VC arena, from the dev arena, from all of those different parties that come together in, I guess, co-support of each other. It's a definite, real internal ecosystem of support. Are you in that group? Because certainly synthetics is, certainly Kane is, and they support each other as they build out the DeFi, especially when it comes to Ethereum. So I wanted to be, frank with you and forthright, because it is going to be a boon for you if you're accepted in that world. And you referenced the value of companies or teams like Decentralized designs like synthetics working with Jarvis Network or with others of like nature and design. So are you confident that you're in the club? Because that's going to give you access to tools and services and support like you've never seen before if you're not in that group.
Honestly, I don't have the feeling that I am in this club yet. I think we are still too small, and also maybe because we are French. There is these things that many people, they mainly focus on American or even Australian, or Russians on the project. But to be also honest, we have a lot of overlaps in terms of network and people we know with synthetics. For example, few of our biggest investors were also very into synthetics. Few of our partners as well. So when I mean partners, I mean people who are committed to provide liquidity to our system, and they are also providing liquidity in synthetics. So yeah, but the thing is that again, DeFi, it's a big niche, but I will try to push a bit more the boundaries of it and try to just to create other kind of networks and bring more people. So for example, we are mainly focused on Forex. So one of the things I have done, yes, I have discussed actually with many people. Like for example, we spoke with DeFi Alliance, which is also working a lot with synthetics, and they like what we do, but they said, oh yeah, but since you do Forex, it will be complicated for us to actually find someone who could provide liquidity for such market. Because if you ask me to provide liquidity for Bitcoin, no problem. I have a lot of people, but for Forex, it might be more complicated. We knew it. So at the same time, we have contacted more regular people, market makers, which are working in the Forex industry. And we explained them what we do. And they understood that by providing liquidity on systems similar to us, they can actually do maybe a bit more money, or they can do something cool that they cannot do by providing liquidity to a regular broker. So there is those people who can come and create new network, and we don't need to leverage from all those big networks or clubs that synthetics and other big projects are focusing on. And also myself, I have quite a big community in the trading industry, in the retail trading industry. And I would like also to bring this community to DeFi. So we won't be using the same channel of communication, or of course we will try to attract some Degen and DeFi people on Twitter when we're going to launch our farming. But my main goal is actually, as I said, to bring DeFi to more people. So I will try to do some things to attract regular trader from Forex, the Forex industry, market makers from Forex industry, and try to create some kind of new network. And also maybe to focus a bit in Europe to create this network and some emulation there.
Yes, and that's really exciting, to be honest with you, because I sincerely, being in Australia, I support Australasia, I support Europe, I support all of the global initiatives. And as you mentioned before, DeFi is global, and we do want to see you have more of a market share. I've always felt that with Jarvis Network. And that's why I asked, are you in that club? Because it can be closed doors initially with certain startups because they want to build up that, I guess, the success of those startups initially. But I do think that just by the sheer work that you bring forward and your connections with, most importantly, outside of the scope of crypto, your experience, your work knowledge, your history, all suggest that you can bring more of these experienced parties into the conversation of experimenting and tinkering with the DeFi elements of brokerage, of liquidity provision, of essentially the whole network that you're offering, the suite of tools. So it's exciting to hear that you are going to be becoming more and more, I guess, vocal, from a tech sense and from an offering and product and protocol sense. But I wanted to ask you also more about that liquidity aspect, because that's a very fundamental part to increase that, to maintain liquidity pools as well with stablecoins. So have you got the resources, as you build forward in your roadmap, to really give confidence to those speculators who are also supporting Jarvis, as you build out your multi-utility design, so that we know that you're progressing in the right direction, so you're building that liquidity pool?
Yeah, so first, maybe I need to explain just a few things about how our synthetic assets are working. So the protocol that we have designed is very flexible, which means that you can actually mint synthetic assets through different ways. The first method and mechanism that we have launched, it's called minting against a liquidity provider. So it's literally similar to synthetics. But synthetics is using a depth system as well as a unique pool, while we are using USDC. So I cannot print USDC, so we do not use a depth mechanism. And we have opted for a C-load system where one pool is linked to one synthetic asset. This way, a liquidity provider could decide to only risk their funds on the euro, for example, or on the gold, but not on other assets.
Okay.
It has pros and it has cons. Of course, the biggest issue is the scalability, because if you have 7 different pools, then you need, USDC in the 7 different pools. While with synthetics, you just put all the SNX in, in one pool, and that's all. But this is a design that we have decided for the risk management, because again, when we've been discussing with market makers and liquidity provider, one of the things I would like is to be able to manage their risk more accurately. So we have this design, minting against USDC, and it works in a very easy way. If you want to mint a synthetic asset, so you are buying, you buy it from the liquidity provider. So what you do, you send 100 USDC to the contract, let's say the euro contract. And in exchange, this euro contract will send you back $100 worth of euro at the price of Chainlink, because we use this oracle. And actually, under the hood, what is happening is a bit different. When you send the 100 USDC, you send it to a liquidity pool where there is already some money, some USDC, which are idling in the pool. And then when your 100 USDC arrive, actually 50 USDC, so 50%, are taken out from this pool. And altogether, they are sent to another contract, which is called the derivative contract. And this derivative contract mints $100 of euro with the collateral of $150. So there is a 150% collateral ratio at the beginning. So this is how our design minting against a liquidity provider work. But this pool where you send USDC and then it adds their own USDC, it's just one design, but we can do many other designs. So the second design that we will launch, we still don't know when exactly, but it will be not a long time. It's a borrowing mechanism. So it's similar to MakerDAO, UMA, and so on, where if you want to mint J-Euro, you actually will borrow the J-Euro from the protocol. So you will be able to deposit, for example, Link token, so $500 of Link token, and you will be able to borrow 1 or 2, maybe 250.
That's going to be a game changer, because suddenly you'll be able to have that lending and borrowing capacity built in, and you're building more of a platform in that sense, not just a protocol. So I want to go back then, and I would love to hear more of that, but I just want to reiterate for the listener as well that one-to-one minting system using that liquidity provider, having that 50% from the pool, that's also pretty significant for security. That for me would give me more confidence to, I guess, allay some of and mitigate some of those key risks that other basket sort of approaches with one sort of entry into a multitude of, or a multiple of different assets in once. That is a high risk. So again, I really want to stress that you're reducing risk for the user, and that's an important development, even though there are those pros and cons. So thank you for explaining that. That's something I did not know that you'd focused on. Do you want to touch on now that other aspect that you're planning on bringing out soon, arguably Q2 or Q3 this year? I'm not going to put pressure on dates, but that ability to borrow and lend, to then experiment with, tinkering with the assets, the synthetic assets. That's another way for people to engage when they perhaps otherwise couldn't, because you're allowing them to borrow.
Yeah, it's because you have 2 ways of minting assets. So with Maker, it's you borrow. With synthetics, you trade against liquidity pool. So the idea was just to say, okay, why not doing both at the same time? And actually, we have other pools design that will come up in the future, which are also quite cool. But the initial question that you asked was, okay, how will we have enough liquidity, and do we have the financial capacity, and so on and so on. So we have raised funds last June, and we are quite lucky. We raised $1.3 million. And as you know, June was also the beginning of the farming. So we have decided to actually take part of what we have raised. So I think it was 25%. And we have decided to start to provide liquidity on compounds, to start to farm some comp token, and then a bit in YFI, and so on and so on. And we are very lucky to have started at this exact period, because we were supposed to raise additional funds. 1.3 million is a big amounts, but it was not enough to do what we wanted to do, because it's okay to pay some expenses, to start to bootstrap something,
Right.
to pay auditors, because security costs a lot of money. But it was not enough if we want to have more liquidity and so on and so on. So actually, we succeed to almost triple our treasury. So
Wow.
now, yeah, we are quite happy to have enough stablecoin, because we mainly have stablecoins. I mean, we don't keep a lot of Bitcoin or ETH and so on.
Wow. So that was a
And
way of allaying having to do a second round or a third round, which is fantastic, because obviously that impacts on the overall, I guess, choices that the team have and the access to their own funds and resources. So that's really good news, I think, even for the speculator to hear that, and even for those who are supporting this multi-utility, because the less that you have from the top-down pressure in terms of their demands and how they want to engage, the better it is for open access and even for the spirit of DeFi. So well done and congratulations. It was fortuitous entry. It was a risk even to do that, but it turned out well. So now you have several million in the bank for the runway.
yeah, we almost have 9 years in front of us at the current burning rate. And so of course we won't wait 9 years, but what I meant is that we have quite a good amount of money in front of us. We will use a lot of this money to provide liquidity in our own system, of course. So we will actually be one of the main liquidity provider at the beginning, until more partners are joining the party and provide liquidity. And until also we will allow more people, like out of the company and our partner network of partners, to start providing liquidity. Because at the beginning we really want to be one of the sole liquidity provider, and that's pretty much it. And after, to allow more people to do it.
That's fantastic. And it's great that you can be, that you do have that liquidity there. You have that, the resource and the funds, more importantly. Now, the team itself, there's a bit of a joke, I guess, on the website about the crazy tech stack team. But in reality, you do have a very good team. You know, I've always thought this. So given that you've also been successfully raising more funds and engaging in that initial liquidity mining to the success, you know, and benefit of Jarvis Network, are you expanding your team? Are you hiring more people in the process of building out, I guess, the entire platform that you now are starting to showcase as we move into the next sort of phase of DeFi?
Yeah, so hiring was a long and complicated process. We finally found very good full stack developers, but we still lack of Solidity developers. So right now we are actually hiring at least 1 or 2 Solidity developers. So I'm using actually your audience, if there is any people who may be interested, because yeah, there is still a lot of things to do, and for many things we actually can use freelancer or third-party companies. It's not a big issue, but for the core product itself, we would like to keep everything in-house. And yeah, we will need at least another pair of hands.
Well, if you put an ad out, I'll make sure I retweet it for you as well, Pascal, because, you know, it's always good to hear that you're developing your team as well. And if anyone would like to know more about the team, obviously, because of time issues in the interview, make sure you do look at the website, make sure you engage, and certainly with all the different social channels, that the team is accessible. Now, the thing we talked about pre-interview, we touched on this, was the importance of making sure we expand on the business aspect of Jarvis, the business potential, the business developments. So let's go there for a moment. What's happening even beyond those key integrations technologically, like Chainlink, to really showcase that you're bringing in, you know, utilizing your experience. You're really showcasing that people are paying attention in the real world.
Yeah, so for the business side, what I meant is, you know, there is a famous build it and they will come. Of course, it doesn't work this way. So you have to think that once your protocol is done, and because it's decentralized, maybe you can build a business on the top of it. It could be a centralized business, actually. I mean, you can have your own centralized application with KYC, AML, and so on. Mm-hmm. But under the hood, this could be powered by actually decentralized protocols. So what we want to do, we want to focus on 1 or 2 business cases. Apart from the most obvious, of course, the on-chain trading and the payment remittance are quite obvious use cases that most probably many people will be using. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have J euro, and you can exchange it at the Oracle price for J Naira, for example, which is a Nigerian currencies, or African rand, or Australian dollar, then yeah, you can use this for remittance. But the biggest use case that I want to stress and focus a lot on is actually to try to develop something outside of the DeFi niche. I will just give you an example. So in Nigeria, you can buy Bitcoin, but you can buy Bitcoin with their local currency. And because it's quite hard for them to access to dollar, it means that market makers and equity providers there, they hardly do they cannot do arbitrage, which means that basically the Nigerian market is like a closed market. And many countries are like that. I was telling you about Cameroon before. So yeah, my friend in Cameroon, when they buy Bitcoin, they buy it way more expensive than
it's a big problem.
It's a big problem, but it also means that there is a big market. So the cool thing is that one of our focus this year will also to launch synthetic assets for some not exotic, because I mean they are
developing
exotic
regions, let's say.
Yeah. So for example, one of our focus will be Nigeria, and to launch the J Naira. So the cool thing here is that, and this is why the liquidity pool is very important here. When you have J Naira, let's say that you have $500 of J Naira, you can go to our exchange and you can burn those $500 of J Naira for 500 USDC. Which means that once you have 500 USDC, you can go on Uniswap and you can buy Bitcoin or Ether at the real market price, the price against the dollar. Which means that someone holding J Naira in Nigeria will be able to buy Bitcoin $1 to $5, maybe $10,000 less expensive than someone who will buy Bitcoin using Naira, the real Naira. And you can even check on Binance. In Binance, they have launched quite recently a Bitcoin NGN market, and just check the price, and you're gonna see that there is a big premium of $5,000 or $6,000. So it means that what I want to do is to go into this rabbit hole to try to find partner in Nigeria where we will be able to have a fiat on a ramp for J Naira. So the idea will be that you go to a merchant, you exchange your real Naira for J Naira. So you're gonna have your Ethereum wallet. Then you go to our exchange, and if you want to buy Bitcoin, what will happen is that we're gonna make an atomic swap. So what we will do, we will burn your J Naira, release the USDC, and in the same transaction, exchange those USDC for wrapped Bitcoin or ETH or whatever. And doing that, we will be able to give the opportunity for people in Nigeria, but also in other countries, to be able to trade Bitcoin without this premium.
And actually, that is going to change everything. I want to interrupt there and just say that the fact that, these are the developing regions with the least capital to even start to play around with, they need to save literally every cent, not dollar. And so this is going to have a huge impact if you can pull this off, honestly, Pascal, because it's a great need. It's a huge demand right now in those regions right around the world. And ironically, if we stand up and fight for DeFi, these are some of those imperatives that must happen. So in terms of resources and team, you mentioned you have that runway, but do you have the capacity with the people power, with the resources of your team to get to these key countries to start off with, like Nigeria, and start to liaise with the right stakeholders so that this can happen? Because we want to move on from those narratives of 217, 218, 219, when all the infra is still there, and we're still at in that space now of infrastructural development, but we're so far ahead. We're really at that cusp of experimenting with evidence of the utility in situ and working. So have you got people on the ground? Is this starting to unfold, or when is this likely to happen, when we can start to see this exciting development where people in these regions can benefit from the synthetic system that you're building in as that arbitrage solution?
Yeah, so I don't have directly contact with people in Nigeria, but as I told you before, I have quite a decent network in French-speaking African country. And one of the person I'm actually speaking with almost every day is working with a liquidity provider in Nigeria for Bitcoin, because they are actually running some kind of Bitcoin business there. and they take liquidity with Nigerian people. So actually, I will be working with them they will be a proxy, let's say, to access the Nigerian market. But when the time will come, actually, I will try to create a network there. So again, I know some people in some countries in Africa, but not necessarily Nigeria. But yeah, it will be one of our goals to do that. And we also want to create some kind of grants with our DAO, where we will be able maybe to support financially some people in Nigeria if they want to try at least to build an MVP with us, and other countries. I mean, I was giving Nigeria as an example, but actually we are currently now doing something in Cameroon. So with one of our investors, he's someone from Cameroon. So what we'll try to do with him, the cool thing in Cameroon is that their local currency is called the CFA, which is pegged to the euro. So he has acquired J Euro. So we have launched our euro token on the blockchain. And what he will do, he has the capacity of acquiring a payment. So in his country, in Cameroon. So he can receive payment with a card.
That's a major development, those on and off ramps. I mean, if he's managed to secure that, that's half the battle.
Yeah, so we will try maybe not this week, but next week to make a transaction to buy Ethereum. I mean Ether. So the idea will be that if someone comes to him and says, "Okay, I would like to buy Ether, but not at the price that usually I can buy in Cameroon." So what he will do, he will burn. I mean, first he will receive a payment in fiat. He will burn the equivalent of J Euro, release USDC, buy ETH, and send the ETH to his customer. So of course, right now it's just a test. It's a very small amount. It's with 5,000 J Euro. But the idea is that maybe if we can see that it works and we can try to scale it, then we can have our first use case.
And this is really exciting. Congratulations for this experimentation, because for those listening, I mean, hopefully they can hear the magnitude of this event, because one of the things I'm learning from this interview, and I suspected this before, is that in many ways you are a first mover in certain markets of the world when it comes to synthetic experimentation. And, you positioned with your French background rather, and also, your position geographically, it makes it really exciting to touch into that key market with Africa, especially as your sort of first, endeavor to really afford access and open up access to otherwise, very difficult and prohibitive regions of the world when it comes to ameliorating financial problems, whether they be CeFi, DeFi or other. But the thing I guess I wanted to also ask is, making sure that people are aware of the liveness of your DEX, because that's only been recent and we've known each other for a long time in terms of how you've been developing. And it's been a long road to get to this point, but now you have a live DEX available, and that's going to be key as well, because you have the platform, you have the UX UI built into this as well. But listening to you today also, it makes me think you've still got a long way to go in terms of making sure that we have that perfect seamless experience for the user. And that's fine, because everyone's dealing with that as a team. But are you confident that it's relatively easy, for those who are in the know in crypto now in these regions, so that they can A, educate others, B, make sure that it improves with you, and obviously your team build out the UX UI, and then C, start to see more and more of this evidence of the on and off ramp fiat provisions and services, and that sync with the synthetic access that you provide that's cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done for sure. I mean, we are just at the beginning, but when you build a product, usually you have many upgrades over the time. So basically every 2 weeks, we release a new version of what we have done with new features and this kind of thing. And if everything goes according to what we agreed internally with the project manager and the team, is that in the next 3 to 4 months, we should have all the necessary pieces in place with enough liquidity and security audits completed to start to really accelerate and to start doing things let's say at a bigger scale. So yeah, I'm quite confident that we will get there. It's easier to build UI and rather than to build the technology behind. What took us a lot of time was actually the development of the protocol. It's funny because we are built on the top of UMA. And at some point, we are not like other projects built on UMA. Huh? We are quite different because we have built an entire logic on the top of it.
Yes.
So at some point, UMA was an enabler, like they help us to go very fast, but also they were a blocker. Like for many things, we lost a lot of time because we had to how to say, to circumvent some of the limitation that UMA the UMA design imposed us. This is actually why at some point, Hart, the co-founder of UMA, he called me and he said, okay, look, I see that there are many things that you want to do which are not compatible with the way we have designed UMA.
And that was cool of him to do that, so it helped you build out on others, which you did.
Actually, he told me, fork us, modify the contract, and then, and this is a cool thing that UMA have done, come back to our governance and propose a vote to accept your fork. And if the governance will say yes, then we will integrate what you have done in our protocol. So we are actually a fork of UMA, yet we are supported by UMA and we are integrated within their ecosystem. So yeah, this took us a lot of time to do, and yeah.
And to be honest with, and Pascal, to be honest with you, I mean, having known you for some time and followed you right from the outset, again, it's not because, and for full disclosure, I do own some of these tokens. I mean, that's just, I've chosen that for a long time, but I don't own a lot, but it's not why we're doing this discussion today. The reason I was always interested, because you always took the tech seriously, and you never ever, from every discussion we've ever had, you never wanted to present something that wasn't ready in the roadmap. So there was no FOMO, which was interesting because you could have engaged in that with all of the hype of synthetics at the time. And I really respect you for not doing that. And I think it's very important people know that is truly what happened in the dialogue I've experienced with you. But just with regard to, I guess, the roadmap itself, do you want to touch on the DEX and what it's been like so far in terms of performance, in terms of uptake? Because that was a big deal. I just noticed recently you've released things like the Synthereum manifesto. There's been security information be released. So you're constantly releasing information now, and it's getting stronger, I've noticed as well. So more and more PRs happening, more engagements happening. But most importantly, it's that DEX. How are the numbers? How's the engagement going? How's the usage?
You cannot trade more than $500 at the same time, and there is a limited liquidity. So the usage, I think we have facilitated $36,000 of volume. We actually have done a sub-graph. So soon we're gonna launch our on-chain data dashboard analysis, where everybody will be able to follow them. So far, they only provide 4 assets: USDC, Euro, Swiss franc, and pound. So those are not the assets that will be widely used and traded. So you're gonna have to wait a bit more updates, where we're gonna add a bit more assets, but also non-synthetic assets. So for example, we will add Bitcoin, Aave, Link, Ether, and of course GRT at some point, with the atomic design that I explained you before. So we'll come in our DEX, and if you have USDC, or if you have J Euro, for example, J Euro is better example. And if you want to buy wrapped BTC or Aave, or actually any token which is listed on any AMM, you will be able to burn the J Euro, release USDC, and buy the token you want to buy. And the idea here of this DEX is that at some point it should be able to provide you with the possibility to trade any assets, synthetic against non-synthetic. And for the non-synthetic assets, we do not have our own liquidity pool. It is important to understand that we just connect to other AMM. So we're gonna just level from the pool, the liquidity of SushiSwap, Balancer, Uniswap.
Yes, and the APY has been very good, in that sense as well. I think you've been advertising that as well, over 20% on average for all of them. So that's also a boon. And being that service, like I guess that conduit for those services and for those offerings is a boon, because you can offer more than one. You mentioned SushiSwap's been popular at the moment, and there's others to come. Uniswap is, well known right around the world for the services it provides. So it's great to know that, you're not taking on all of that responsibility and all that pressure internally.
Yeah.
So let's talk about one more thing, and that's the roadmap itself. What's coming up, Pascal? You're the CEO. So what's coming up that is really exciting you beyond the DEX release, and now it's fully live, and people can experience that with the the platforms that you've created, or those I guess UX UIs that are out there, and they'll no doubt continue to be developed by the team. But what's something coming other than that really exciting development with the borrowing, which I think is really, really going to change things, that people may not know, people can get excited about in the future, so that we inject a little bit of FOMO. I mean, let's be real, you deserve it. You've been so by the book. You've been so, focused on regulation and making sure that everything's been properly done. But what's something that speculators could get excited about as well?
Yes, so for the roadmap, if I have to pick up the three things I'm the most excited, so of course, there is a borrowing pool because it will give the flexibility to the protocol to actually increase a lot the total value locked, but also to leverage from many other tokens. So at some point when the liquidity of GRT will be enough, we would like to allow people to borrow any synthetic assets using either GRT or most likely GRT ETH. So basically the liquidity pool token, GRT ETH. And so this is one of the things I'm the most excited about, because there are many cool consequences and features that can be enabled as soon as we have the borrowing aspect. The second thing on the roadmap I'm the most excited, it's what we have called the on-chain liquidity router. So it's basically what I have explained to you before. It's to make atomic swap between Synthereum liquidity and any other AMM. And this year, for me, it will really have a huge impact within DeFi and DEXs. And the third thing I'm the most excited is actually very basic, but it's a DAO. Because the way I imagine the DAO is not just, hey, let's vote on the parameters, or no. What I imagine is more like a company who has to manage their treasury. And the treasury will come from the trading fees that the protocol is charging, the incentives that we are also receiving, because since we are part of UMA, we actually receive UMA token every week. And of course, we have our own GRT funds. And what I want is that the people who hold GRT to really understand that they own a part of this treasury. They are part of the DAO, and I want them to take business and financial decision. And I would like if we can grow the treasury all together. I would like to farm with the treasury. I would like if the DAO can become a liquidity provider. I would love if the DAO can borrow from the protocol. So I want a very active DAO. And basically the way I currently manage the treasury and the company, I would like if the DAO can do the same for the protocol. This is why I'm quite excited, because for me, it's like, hey, let's all be together in this, all the GRT holders, and let's try to make money and to make the DAO as rich and powerful as possible.
And what's interesting about this is that I've really noticed that with Jarvis, with the Discord and with the community sentiment and even the dialogue, you have a very strong community. It's very civil. It's a lot of into support for each other. There's, and I think that's something that I really wanted to know more about and followed through on, and making sure that was happening before any prospect of a DAO. So you're very well situated for the likelihood of a DAO emerging in the future. What I also like hearing from you is that you are prepared to state clearly that you want to build a company, potentially utilizing these DeFi protocols. And that's important, because that's the only way you're going to be really moving forward for decades, and even beyond that, is to have some sort of logical and sustainable system built in, so that you can benefit from the protocol that you put out there, because we want to see these services, and they only come from a very specific system that can be built on the protocol for those parties to engage in many different countries around the world. I want to see those on-ramps and off-ramps happen. I want to see those key parties in those countries that you set up, with your connections. And I think that's all going to come in time, because you built all of these infrastructural steps in place very sequentially and very deliberately and very concisely. You're taking your time to do that. The big question I have now is, what the bloody hell is going on with that token, in terms of why aren't more people taking notice? And I mean this sincerely. I mean, I own a small amount, sure, but it's always anomalous to me when you compare synthetics to you. For example, you're an 18 mil cap at the moment, very small when we compare that. You know, at the moment, the potential of this, the way the price has moved has been relatively speculative. And that makes sense because you haven't had all your products out. But the future is what I want to talk about with that token. I don't see what I see in the past with the future of JRT. And that's because of all the things we're talking about. And I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are. When we talk about multi-utility, I'm not here to talk about price, but talk about that multi-utility in concert with everything else. That token should move because of that, not because of speculation alone.
I think we did I will say it's a mistake, but for me it's not a mistake. But let's say we did the same thing as many projects like Kyber Network. We first focused on the tech and the product. Is that we don't have a sexy token right now. So of course we are aware of it. It's just that for now it was not my priority to try to revamp a bit the token economics. But of course, what I want is to have a very sexy narrative, a very sexy token economic, and a community which is here to spread our message and our narrative. It's basically how synthetics became what they became. Again, yes. Fake it till you make it. And but again, I know that many people are actually frustrated because we don't do marketing, because we don't try to over-advertise what we do and this kind of thing. But it's because the way we work is that we want first to build the basis. We want first to do some basic stuff before to start to do many marketing, because I don't want people to come to the exchange or to come to the protocol and be disappointed, because the first impression is always the most important.
Yes, so that's very French of you as well. Let's be real. That's very French of you. And let's be honest as well. It makes sense. I mean, some did fake it until they made it for many, many months. They really relied on that narrative, and they had the right network to build up that price, to be honest. But you have staking, governance, rewards, and the burn built into the multi-utility functionality. That is a significant thing for supporting the prospects of attention. That's a big factor when it comes to understanding even what Jarvis Network is, but some come just for the speculation. So respectfully, I appreciate that you are by the book and you are tech first and then talk second. You've always been like that. But now you are getting close to needing marketing because you have real offerings. So talk us through that. Let's push a little bit harder and get people knowing about this, because Jarvis deserves to be known.
Yeah, it's totally true. And it's really our plan anyway. I mean, we have the budgets to run press release campaign. I myself have the network, at least in France. In France, I am some kind of influencer. So I know that I just have to push some buttons to gain more visibility and so on. We have also the budget to run a press release campaign and publish articles and this kind of thing. And we also can, of course, pay the services of some marketing people in the space. So we will do that for sure, because we know that we can't just build something and just expect that things will happen.
Well, a lot of these speculators and a lot of these backers, they're going to be loving that comment, because the reality is that right now, until you have that full-blown proof of utility operations and obviously that's building, speculation has to be respected as well. And even those parties in the community who are there just to support what I call that pre-utility phase. You're definitely still in that emerging sort of category, like almost all the startups are anyway. So it's music to the ears to respect the importance of marketing. It's not necessarily about that price appreciation, but it is valid, to make sure, like any business in anywhere in the world, that's taken seriously. Otherwise you end up, being that unknown other Google that never happened, in the DeFi sense. So I really appreciate that. Hopefully you do have really good quality marketing teams as well that aren't just about that ridiculous, 120x tomorrow style. So do you want to comment on how you've sought through the process of marketing and what kind of due diligence you've done to reflect on the integrity of the team that you have?
Well, for now, we don't really have hired any marketing person. So, and we still didn't have engaged with a third party for marketing. Mm-hmm. Again, it was too early for us. Just now we will start doing it. So I actually started discussing with our investors if they could point me some PR company and some marketing company to help us here. But I want to stress on something. I run a very successful business before, and this business is actually still active and is still generating a lot of cash flow. And this is how I became somehow known in France.
Mm-hmm.
And the marketing that we have done here, it's the kind of marketing that I do like, and for me, it's the most powerful one. So what I have done in France, I have done a YouTube channel, and I have, of course, created a lot of content. But you know how usually people who do marketing, they are working. They do a content on YouTube, they tell you some stuff, half of the information, and they tell you, hey, leave an email under the video. I will send you something free, don't worry. But after, you're going to have some emailing, and you know how it works.
Not really, so because mine are free. But I know what you mean. Like there's a lot of pump.
Yeah, so the way we have done marketing in France was quite different. We actually did very high quality video and absolutely for free. We never asked email. We never tried to sell any product. We just deliver value. So on the short term, it didn't work. Like the first 2 years, the company I had was, okay, making money, but nothing very incredible compared to all my competitors who were using a very heavy marketing, email marketing, and so on.
Sounds like crypto, doesn't it?
Sounds like crypto. But I knew that in the long term, this could be very good. So, and it happened because at some point, the video on YouTube started to be more and more seen because it was, again, high quality video at the point where my video were one of the most seen in the trading, industry or economy in France.
That's excellent.
And this gave me a lot of traction, and this totally explodes the result of the company. And this is how we became one of the leading company in France in this industry. And I'm doing the same actually in DeFi. It's not very obvious for non-French speaking people, but I'm very active in many DeFi French group. I'm doing a lot of meetup, and actually it has helped to make Jarvis more known without having never spoken about Jarvis. It means that I went to the event, I presented synthetics, I presented curve and so on, and people, they like that you give value. So they remember you. They're like, okay, this guy is very cool. He taught me so much, and I will remember his name, and I will always assimilate this guy to DeFi and this kind of thing. So
that's really cool. That's something I didn't know about you, and it really comes down to that age-old adage of the focused and the steady. I don't want to say the slow and steady because you're not moving slowly now. You are moving fast with your team. So it is that focused and steady approach that wins the race. And even then, it's not a race. But when it comes to legitimacy, when it comes to integrity, that is definitely always been you, but you're proving that now with the approach that you've taken, even in the context of marketing. And congratulations for all the success in France. I'd like to see that, spill out beyond France. And now I see what your plan is with the French-speaking community first, and making sure that's really where you capitalize on your position. And then from there, it's going to go global. It's going to move into many different communities around the world. It's clear that there's a need for this as well, Pascal. It's great also to know that you've been looking also around the space for people who have the same position as you, that want to start off with that integrity, want to start off with, speaking, and selling, I guess, in the true educational sense, not in the FOMO sense. And I think that's where you're aligning with the right people right across the space in crypto. And it's just the beginning for you. I really do. I've always thought that, but now I can see how long you've taken to get to this point. And now you're at the cusp of perhaps that moment you had in the YouTube sense and the trading sense for Jarvis Network. It may take the next few months or even up to a year, but you're going to have that moment, I think, where it just switches into a totally different gear of awareness and education, because people go, I get it. I see now all these pieces come together. Now I see the benefits of what this protocol and platform can do. So congratulations. It's really exciting to know that. Thanks for sharing it. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you was, your sentiment more broadly, because we see it's a sentiment driven market in the space of crypto. It's a very bizarre space sometimes with the wild, wild west. We see the arguments of bullish and bearish. But in reality, if you have a really good product, that sentiment should totally be thwarted by utility and stretching far beyond the borders of crypto itself. So what are your thoughts on the future of crypto and the future of Jarvis, as a part of the closing of the interview?
So I will just give a point of view that I'm more a dream rather than what I truly think, because you can't know the future. I mean, there are so many moving pieces that, So my dream is more that I hope that countries and regulators, they will start understanding that DeFi it will have the same incidence than self-driving car has or will have on the automobile industry. And the best way to say it, it's one of the US regulators. He said, look, I am not regulating banks. I am regulating bankers. And if banks start to be fully automated, for example, on the blockchain, there is no need for regulation. So I'm not afraid about the upcoming regulation, because if it will come, it will have to adapt. It's not DeFi that will adapt to regulation. And I'm not saying that because I'm like a stupid idealist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very pragmatic. It's like if you say Tesla cars that drives alone, they will have to adapt to the regulation of the road. No, the road, I mean, the way we conceive the code of I don't remember the name in English, but the law on the roads will adapt to self-driving car. The same way regulation will adapt to DeFi. The only concern I have, it's AML, because regulation is something else. Regulation is how to be sure to protect investors against other people. This is what is regulation for. But AML is different. AML is how to make sure that we do not help bad person to make money laundering.
And that's what regulators around the world are concerned about also. So I really want to touch on that before the end of the interview is how are you engaging with the regulators? How are you liaising? How are you trying to make sure that you're confident that you've crossed all your T's, dotted your I's, so that you can emerge not just with this incredible suite of offerings and a protocol to boot, but something that the countries around the world that you work with are going to accept?
So we have spoken with 2 regulators so far, but small one. Mm-hmm. So nothing to be proud about. But what I am noticed is that regulators, if you are proactive, meaning that you contact them and you try to educate or lobby or make some lobby, somehow they could listen. It may take time, but they could listen. So what I try to do is to be proactive, to try to be transparent, and to explain them that we cannot be evil. It's not just the same sentence Google, like, we cannot be evil. No. In DeFi, when everything's transparent, when everything can be audited and seen by anyone, yes, you cannot be evil. So there is no reason to try to regulate something that can't be regulated. The only things that should be done, it's risk warning. We just have to explain to the user the that's all. And if more than happy, not to close their eyes, but to leave us the way. And then we will just to resolve this AML issue. I don't say that crypto are used for money laundering. I mean, I think you know the numbers like me. But it's true that nothing as of today prevents me to use dirty money on Aave or on Jarvis. And this is a big issue.
Yes, and as you know, I mean, we still have that same problem in the fiat world as well. You always have the anti-money laundering campaigns and systems built in, not just for crypto. That's the reality. And as you mentioned, or you alluded to, is that the transparency afforded by the technological value of blockchain is even more reason why it's going to happen where regulators play catch up to the tech innovation, because it's happened throughout history. Technology leads out regulation, exactly in that order, as you said. So I'm confident, as you are, that regulation will play catch up and will sync with many of the endeavors of teams like you. But Pascal, I just wanted to say thank you sincerely for this long interview. It's one of many I hope in the future we do as updates, because now I can really see you're ready. You're ready for that awareness. You're ready for that first beginning. Now that the DEX is live and all the others, all the other protocol developments continue on. But most importantly, you're starting to engage with the business thinking, the business mentality. And you've proven today that you have all of that skill set and all of that empirical evidence of already making it successful in other endeavors you've done with trading world. So you've got it all in place, you've got it all there, and it's just going to be that push in that in the right direction that sort of changes the gear, and then everything's going to fall into place, I think, for Jarvis. And then in the years to come, it's going to be exciting to see how you start to ameliorate and alleviate some of the problems in these developing regions. So mate, on behalf of all the people in crypto, I wish you all the very best. And I'm really proud to say I own some of these tokens, knowing now what you're exactly headed for. And I'll probably be buying more, to be honest. And that's not financial advice. That's my choice. I want to support that multi-utility, and I want you to keep building. Is there anything you'd like to say as a final comment to end the interview?
Just don't be evil. I mean, try to educate as many people as possible. Try to do good. And I'm very happy actually with this interview, because most of the interview I have done before, it was mainly, okay, how does the protocol work? What you're gonna do if this is happening, and so on. And here I had the feeling it was a more global discussion, so it was actually quite enjoyable. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me. And I hope that maybe another time when we're gonna do an interview, maybe a year after, we can discuss about the milestones that we have achieved and to see the difference.
Absolutely, mate. And I promise you it won't be a year. I'll make sure that it'll be a hopefully quarterly thing. We'll shorten it down into bite-sized chunks that's palatable. But for those who survived this long interview, thank you so much for listening into the developments, the work that this team's put in. They really have been doing quite a lot. The CEO is here as the key resource. I'm just simply that platform provider, that conduit to the information and founders. So once again, Pascal, thank you as the CEO for making time. And if you'd like to know more, make sure you do subscribe to their channels, certainly to Pascal's. Make sure you look into the links below and engage with the community. That's what it's all about, making sure that you're part of the DeFi, not just in narrative, but in actually contributing to something that is game-changing for the future of us all around the world. And thank you again, Pascal.
Thanks, Bradley.